Hello there, welcome to another episode of Geeks Cantina. My name is Geeks, and today, in this episode, I'm going to be talking about my thoughts and opinions on the latest MCU movie, that's Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, that being Black Widow. That's been recently released on Disney Plus Premier Access, and by recently, I mean yesterday, as in Friday just gone. So, here we are. This is what I thought. And before I get into the movie, I just want to say, yes, I've spoken a lot about Star Wars and other franchises and everything while since I've started this YouTube channel, but I've been remiss by not saying that I am actually a massive MCU fan. I love the Marvel movies. I've watched all of them multiple times. I cried like a baby when Iron Man dies at the end of Endgame. Ooh, spoilers, but to be honest, everyone knows by now, so it's not really a spoiler, is it? So, yeah, I know the movies. I know them inside out, I would say. So you can imagine my excitement when finally I got to watch Black Widow yesterday. Now, I did watch this on Disney Plus Premier Access, so I did pay the £20 to watch the movie while it's on Premier Access. You know, some people have a little bit of an issue with paying the £20 to watch a movie early on Disney Plus. Yes, I'm talking a lot about Disney Plus, but that seems relevant at the moment. And I've got no problem paying it because I had a long day at work, long week at work, so it was nice to be able to sit and watch the movie in the comfort of my own living room. You know, and it's about the same price as 2 cinema tickets anyway, so, and I get to watch it over and over again for as long as I have my Disney Plus account, which is going to be a long time. So now, with all that being said, as a massive MCU fan, I was very excited when finally they got to release the Black Widow movie after numerous delays for this reason, that reason, for whatever reason. That's a different subject for maybe a different time. But for now, the movie was released yesterday. I was itching to watch it, and all I can say is that it really didn't disappoint. When trying to describe what kind of movie Black Widow is, yes, it is an MCU movie, but the thing I like about the MCU movies is they like to mix their genres a little bit. You know, they like to not all the movies aren't all the same. You know, yes, they are essentially superhero movies, but they all tend to be a little bit different. It's slightly different spins on it. When talking about Black Widow, I would describe it as a spy espionage slash superhero movie, obviously, slash family dysfunctional drama. That's probably the best way for me to describe it. It's got a little bit of, you know, Mission Impossible, a little bit of Bourne thrown in there as well. There's also very for the middle part of the film is a very strong kind of buddy cop feel, which we'll talk about. I'll talk about that very shortly. So if the James Bond franchise and the Marvel franchise got together and had a baby, it would probably be something along the lines of Black Widow. That would probably be the best way to describe it. Now, of course, the movie is headed up by the gorgeous Scarlett Johansson and co-stars Florence Pugh, Rachel Weisz, and the always awesome David Harbour. So yes, the movie is titled Black Widow, but it isn't strictly 100% her movie. Yes, she's the core character. She's the movie that she's the character that the movie revolves around. But it is very much about the family-esque dynamic between her and Alexei and Melina and what was the other? Yolanda. You see, I remembered all of their names, and I didn't even have to Google it or anything. So they're the kind of they're the family within the movie. It's not exactly what it initially advertised in the trailers. I'm not going to say this is going to be spoiler free. I'm not going to ruin anything of the movie, so I don't want to ruin anything because it's only just come out. If it had been a couple of weeks down the line, then maybe I would be tempted to put some spoilers on it. But there's not going to be any spoilers. But the dynamic is a little bit different than initially I thought, and initially was advertised in the trailers. But the family dynamic is there. Don't get me wrong. So you know, there's all that drama in the middle of the movie is all there surrounding their dysfunction. It puts the fun in dysfunctional, that is for sure. So as you'd expect with all Marvel movies, that it's a very, very well put together film. The special effects are just second to none. There was a few dicey moments. There's a couple of moments that felt a little bit, you know, special effects weren't 100%, but you know, what is 100%? There's very, very few films that are absolutely perfect. I could name a few in my opinion, but that's a different list for a different time. But as far, you know, across the board, I would say that the movie looks spectacular, very well polished. The special effects and were very, very, very Marvel-esque. You know, big explosions, lots of gunfire, and people being thrown through walls and off buildings, and there's even an avalanche, which to my recollection there hasn't yet been an avalanche in an MCU movie, so it's nice to see them doing something a little bit different. One of the things I really did enjoy, was actually the action sequences. Because when you watch the Marvel movies, you know, you can always expect good special effects, good action sequences, and generally an all-round half decent looking film. But the action sequences in Black Widow, I think were a little bit cut above, because there were some very, very memorable ones. To name just two, there was a fight scene between Scarlett Johansson's character, Natasha Romanoff, and Florence Pugh's character in their apartment, and they have a pretty hardcore fight. It's pretty, yeah. Again, I'm not gonna ruin anything for you, but you know, that's pretty hard hitting, and they take some nasty bumps and things like that. It's a really visceral kind of dirty fight, and it was really, really good. I really, really enjoyed it. And another one being, there's a chase sequence through the streets of, I can't remember, I think it might have been Moscow. I can't be 100% sure. Or was it Budapest? It might have been Budapest. Yes, it's in Budapest. And it's a very, very good chase sequence. It's quite reminiscent of a Bourne movie. That's kind of where my brain was ticking over when I was watching it. That's what I was thinking. It's kind of a bit Bourne-ish, but you know, it's a spy espionage movie. Of course, there's going to be elements of James Bond and Mission Impossible and Jason Bourne and all those kind of movies in it. But there was a very, very good action sequence, a chase sequence involving motorbikes and cars and a big old armored vehicle, and you know, lots of cars being destroyed, and you know, just general MCU fun, and it was great. And one of the things I was really looking forward to seeing in this movie was the villain. Well, you know, it had all been hyped up as Taskmaster being the villain, and yes, Taskmaster is the villain, or is a villain in the movie. Again, I'm not going to ruin anything, but when Taskmaster was on screen, the character was just really, really awesome. I didn't really like the outfit too much. It was too colourful for my liking. But you know, the fight sequences that Taskmaster and Natasha Romanoff have are actually really, really quite good. And you know, Black Widow gets her butt kicked on numerous occasions by Taskmaster. But they're just my biggest criticism is there just wasn't enough. You know, I suppose I understand in some respects less is more, but there wasn't a huge amount of Taskmaster in there. But when Taskmaster was on the screen, I found myself really, really drawn in. You know, they made him out to be like this, made the character out to be like this Terminator type, but also an incredible fighter. And they really pushed into the mimicking. But again, there just wasn't enough of it. And so probably one of the things I took away was that yes, it had a good villain, but there just wasn't enough of it. It's kind of wouldn't say it's up there with one of my favourite MCU villains, and but it's not one of the worst either. You know, so but still, it still caught my attention every time Taskmaster was on the screen, and you know, very well. You know, the action sequences were very, very good, and but again, there was a few little niggly things that I didn't like about Taskmaster, but you know, that just, no movie is perfect, really, is it? As I said before, you know, the movie is a lot centralised around the family dynamic. between all of the central characters, and because of that, and don't get me wrong, that is, you know, considering it's an MCU movie and the subject and everything like that, it is very, very well done. You know, the acting between all the core cast is actually really, really good, as you'd expect. You know, particularly with like David Harbour and Rachel Weisz, you know, the kind of veteran actors, Scarlett Johansson and Florence Pugh. Is that how you pronounce the surname? I'm not entirely sure, and I apologise if I'm butchering it. But they're all very, very good actors on their own. So you chuck them all together, even though it is such a fantastic situation, the acting, when they're all in the room together, and their performances are actually incredibly good. Because there's so much focus on the family dynamic, that I think the story suffers a little bit. It's not the big scrolling epic. You know, it looks and it feels like a smaller movie, which it is. You know, it's a small story and a small movie, but with big action, if that makes sense. It tends to be the way with these Marvel movies that aren't Avengers, but they're and that's I think the story suffered a little bit. It was a little bit convoluted in some bits, and some you know, there wasn't enough story in there. But I could kind of see what they were doing. I think the movie was about 2 hours 15 minutes long, so it's still quite a half decent length movie, but it just seemed to be a kind of the middle part of the movie was just limping along a little bit. It just didn't seem, it started off really, really quick, really well, really fast and fast paced, and you were kind of getting with it and getting familiar with the characters and the scenario, and then it kind of felt like it stalled a little bit. You know, then that had to deal with all the family dynamics, and then the story started up again, and it just kind of, it felt a little bit disjointed for my opinion. You know, there was nothing wrong with the story when it was there, but it just didn't seem like it spent a lot of time on the crux of what the mission was. I mean, the movie was fun. You know, even though it dealt with, it kind of skirted around a lot of the abuse side stories. It kind of hinted at this, and well, I didn't hint at certain things that actually came out and blatantly spoke about it, as was during a brilliant scene between Florence Pugh, Scarlett Johansson and David Harbour. They're sitting in a vehicle, or I think it was in a plane, if I recall, and Rachel Pugh's character's talking about how she was sterilised, and it's horrible to talk about, awful, it's just a terrible, terrible thing, but you have to watch the movie to understand that it was actually a very, very quite comical scene with David Harbour. You have to watch it to really understand. But they did talk about the controversy that was brought up in Avengers: Age of Ultron, when Black Widow was talking about her being sterilised and how her being a monster and all that other jazz, all that other controversy. People just like to make a mountain out of a molehill, I think. But that's my opinion. But yes, so it spoke a little bit about the abuse, the physical abuse, psychological abuse, but it didn't delve too deeply into it, because the movie is an MCU movie. They couldn't go too dark with it, really. And tonally, the film was actually wasn't actually terribly serious. I was half expecting it to be a bit more of a brooding movie, but actually there were actually some legitimately funny moments. David Harbour being the proponent of most of them, but I spoke earlier on about this buddy cop scenario when Florence and Natasha Romanoff reunite after their fight sequence in Budapest. They kind of have a double act thing going on, and you know, there's years past, the MCU movies have come across a lot of criticism for not featuring strong female characters. I would disagree in some respects. In some ways I would agree with it. I disagree in the fact that yes, it had strong female characters in them, but none of them took the limelight. You know, but after the very strong female character moment in the end of Endgame, you really can't dispute the fact that there are some real kick-ass female characters in the MCU. That being said, Black Widow certainly doesn't shy away from that. There's a very sisterly bond between Yolanda and Natasha. You know, not straight away. They don't end up being very good friends, but there's a lot of bickering and a lot of sniping and bantering and things like that. And you know, we all know what's going to lead to them being, you know, sisters again and all that other jazz. But it was quite funny to see how those two bounced off each other, and it got pulled off very, very well. And it was nice to have two strong female characters in an MCU movie just sitting in the car chatting and just bantering with each other, because you don't really get to see that very much. You know, yes, you know, there are some very strong male characters in the MCU movies, but it was very, very refreshing to see this kind of thing coming into the MCU and Black Widow movie. Well, I had an absolute riot watching this film. You know, was it perfect? Absolutely not. It wasn't perfect. You know, what I would say a perfect MCU movie is, I'll go all the way, dial the clock all the way back to the original Iron Man movie with directed by Jon Favreau. That was a perfect movie in my eyes. That is just MCU perfection. The one that started it all off. That was just genius. But yes, so Black Widow was a really, really good film. It really, really did entertain me. I'd been looking forward to watching it, and obviously there'd been a lot of hype because of all the delays of COVID and this and that and whatever. But I sat through and I was completely drawn in. My expectations were exceeded watching this film, and I was pleasantly surprised by the end of it. You know, it did lag a little bit at the end for the final kind of climax. You know, there was big action sequences. The climax was a bit, you know, but they did. One thing that I will say, it is set between Captain America: Civil War and Avengers: Infinity War. In case anyone was wondering when it was set, and it does tie in, you know, quite nicely in that time zone, that little slot that goes in between the two movies. And I shan't say any more, but there is, you know, a nice connection with the Natasha heading towards the direction of what happens in Infinity War. Probably my biggest negative thing I will say about Black Widow film, and I'm sure loads of people have thought it, loads of people have already said it by now, but it just felt a little bit too little too late. When they first introduced Natasha Romanoff in Iron Man 2, I think from there on, just her Scarlett Johansson's portrayal of the character, I think everyone wanted her to have her own solo movie, and she did get it. And as I'm talking about it now, watched it last night. However, it felt like it should have happened maybe 5 years ago, you know, because unfortunately, with the character being killed off, spoilers. Come on, if you haven't seen Avengers Endgame by now, you know, why are you watching this? They've killed the character off, so that I think they are quite limited to what they could do in the future. You know, obviously all these characters, older characters, have to be cycled out now eventually anyway to make room for the next phase that is to come. But it did feel a little bit, you know, too little too late. So you know, that being said though, the movie was here, the movie was made, and that can be counted as a victory in itself. No matter when the movie was released. So just to kind of sum up, the movie was fun. It exceeded my expectations. It's pretty much the kind of thing you'd expect from any MCU movie. I thoroughly enjoyed watching it. I thought it was worth the £20 on paying for Premier Access on Disney Plus. It would have been nice to watch it at the cinema, but I'm not crying a river over it because I got to watch it still on a big TV in the comfort of my own living room after having a busy week at work. So it was a plus for me. Disney Plus for me. Oh God, I'm terrible. So yes, the movie was too little too late, but in my opinion, but you know, it came out, I enjoyed it. It was fun, it was funny, great action, it looked good. Story was a little bit lacking and a little bit lagging in some places, but you know, you don't always watch these MCU movies for an excellent story. Sometimes you just need to be entertained. You know, this isn't The Godfather Part 2, but you know, it's still a highly entertaining film, good performances, solid action. You know, it is a little bit violent in some places, so if anyone's considering showing their kids this, I'd maybe watch the film first, because I wouldn't show my 7-year-olds this film at the moment, because I think they're too young, because there are a couple of bits in there that might be a little bit not appropriate for younger viewers. But as far as a rating is concerned, I'm kind of a bit up and down about this because I love MCU movies and I am a little bit biased, but I'm gonna I was going to give it an 8 out of 10. However, because of the story is a little bit lacking, I'd give it a 7.5. I'm going to sit between a 7.5 and the 7 and the 8. I'll sit on the fence between those two, and I'll give it a 7.5 out of 10. Mainly because there was a few stories a little bit. I've already spoke about it, but 7.5 out of 10. I still think is a good outing for an MCU movie. So yeah, that's what I would give. So anyway, that's my ramblings about Black Widow. It's still pretty fresh in my mind. That's why I wanted to record this. And as you may have noticed, I've got a new addition to my Cantina. Hello, Mando. Hello, Jinjarin. Just to kind of, I don't know, brighten up the place. I don't know. But I've got Mando looking over my shoulder for most of my videos now. Anyway, that's what I thought about Black Widow. And that's the end of this episode. Thank you for tuning in and watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. I'm trying to get my subscribers up, so I'd appreciate anyone who could post any kind of feedback or anything like that. Anything to improve the videos or any kind of feedback whatsoever, I'd appreciate. So anyway, my name is Gekes. Thank you for visiting the Cantina, and I will see you again very soon.